Let's check it's working. Is it good? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to tell a lame joke too, like maybe hopefully a little bit better than Roland's. This is officially for me the first Hive or Steam Fest that I've been to where on the second day I can still speak clearly. Because normally it's like gone by now. I understand that some people have also got problems with their voice today. Yeah, I heard it was you, Block Trades, yeah. Which is good because I spoke to you a little bit yesterday to get the clever advice, and today we can just sort of communicate with like hand signals or something. So, hope you're all doing very well. As many of you know, I work on a project called 3Speak, which is a video platform on Hive, and I'm also working on a project called SPK.network. And SPK.network came about because we wanted to get ourselves out of 3Speak. The problem with video platforms is that they're very infrastructure intensive. So you basically have to run storage systems, content delivery systems, encoder systems, and then all sorts of various other systems in the background. And it's all a kind of centralized, heavy-duty system. And then we put the blogs on Hive, and we decentralize the accounts through Hive and all that type of stuff. But the problem is, of course, if we ever get shut down, then all that stuff can go away. And the principles of decentralization is that we want to protect that as much as possible. So my partner, they call me Dan, who unfortunately can't be here today. But his spirits are here. He's wishing you all very well. We worked together for a while and figured out, well, we can use Hive and some level 2 layers on Hive to distribute rewards to infrastructure operators that can help us run the infrastructure that's required on FreeSpeak. So what we're currently working on the Speak network is the ability to let any of you guys run the encoder nodes, run the content delivery nodes, and run the storage nodes yourselves so that you guys don't have to rely on us alone. And then the protocol of the Speak network will reward the people doing that. That's kind of the principle of what the Speak network is. So let me go to the next one here. So currently, we're working on content delivery nodes. So we've built the main node structure, and we're currently adding on the content delivery nodes. So that's going to come out in the next month or two, hopefully, which means, and they're not perfect, but it's the initial layer. So people like Brian of London, who's here, is a very keen node operator in our ecosystem. Thank you very much. And we're just kind of experimenting and getting it going and kind of working together to work out the bugs. We've got encoding nodes already operating. So we have, I think, just under 100 encoder beta testers. And our encoding is not always perfect. It's a tough, heavy-duty job. But again, we've got the nodes out now, and people can run those nodes peer-to-peer. So that's super important. Next one is the off-chain community-backed storage. So currently, we store all the videos. But in the next couple of months, again, we're working quite hard with Disregard Fiat from Deluxe to produce a storage system which runs on a proof-of-access algorithm, which is basically you say that you're storing a video, but you don't necessarily have to. However, the system will randomly check your node to see that you are storing the video. And then once it confirms that you are storing the video, you'll receive some rewards for storing that video. And if you don't store the video that you say that you're storing, your reputation gets penalized in the system. So that's coming out pretty soon. Then we've got the Speak nodes. So currently, some of you in the room, I know, are Speak node operators. This is the Speak claim chain that we're running. And this basically is to carry out transactions on the Speak tokens, the Speak network tokens. So Larynx miner token, Speak token, which is a governance token, and we'll bring out Braca once the nodes are out as well. Braca being the utility token or the resource credits type token. Podcasting and others. So the interesting thing here is, once you consider that the video issue is solved, so you've got the infrastructure running for the video, well, then there's other types of infrastructure we run as well. So you've got people like Arcane talking about running infrastructure nodes for his HAS login system. You've got people like Brian of London, again, running podping and podcasting infrastructure. And there's all sorts of different infrastructure types that the Hive ecosystem needs to run that potentially could use this technology to reward those node operators. So instead of it just being one person running the node and everyone's relying on it, on that piece of infrastructure, if we can figure out ways to build these nodes so we can run them on our own nodes, peer-to-peer, and set those nodes up as easily as possible, we can use this technology and reward system to reward the people doing that. So basically, we don't all rely on one person in the ecosystem or a couple of people. We can really spread it out. And the other one that we're working with Brian of London as well a lot on is the value for value transfers. So he's got his node system up where he transfers between Hive and Lightning, which is great. Then the next question is, can we get other people doing that? And then can we, on top of that, use the Speak network to reward them for doing that, which is like just Lightning on steroids at that point. Let me see, OffChain Accounts. So that's basically the Speak network. So this comes about by getting ourselves out of 3Speak. So we're not the single kind of source of failure, and we can put that back onto the community, right? And then the community can partake in running the video infrastructure. So first thing I want to make here is a point that if any of you are thinking about running infrastructure in something else, or if there's infrastructure in the Hive ecosystem that's being run that isn't decentralized, there should be a way to use this technology to be able to incentivize people for running that peer-to-peer. And we want to try and work on that as much as possible. It really spreads the responsibility across the Hive ecosystem and makes it more secure. Another thing that we've done as part of this is it then becomes apparent that you've got like the on-chain world and the off-chain world. So because video is so intensive, you can't put any of that stuff on chain. It all has to be stored on individual nodes. Whereas text, for example, Hive's a great text storage base, and we put all of our text on Hive. So that's automatically already decentralized. But the video storage is still kind of like modularly decentralized. Even with the Speak network model, it's not on chain, right? But then it's like, well, this is an off-chain system then. We're storing this stuff off-chain. We're going to use IPFS. And then it's like, well, what else can we do off-chain? And then you start to think, well, can we start posting off-chain and have accounts that run off-chain that we associate our Hive accounts with? And so we've built a ceramic account system, ceramic network, if any of you are familiar with it. And basically what these are they're nodes that you can run, but they're not blockchain nodes. And they have their own social media accounts attached to them. So what you do is you basically sign up and get a ceramic account, and then you can post with that ceramic account using your MetaMask wallet. So you can post using your Ethereum address, you can post using your BSC address, you can post using your Bitcoin address, and you can also associate it with your Hive account. So now we're in a position where we can start talking, we're about to be able to start talking with the Ethereum community and be like, you can post and you don't need to spend Ethereum fees to post. And as part of this off-chain account system, we've built an indexer. And for those of you that don't know, an indexer is basically a list of content. And that indexer allows us to put the off-chain content and the Hive content on the same trending page, right? So you can take your LOL comments or your cat pictures or whatever, and you don't need to post those to chain anymore, right? And at the moment, that's not a big deal so much because Hive's still small. But as it scales and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, we're really going to have to deal with what do we want to put on chain and what don't we want to put on chain. It almost gets to the point in the future where you're just using Hive as a custom JSON storage to index things, and all the other content that's not super important can go off-chain on this type of system. So then we're looking at like a multi-chain posting system through Hive. This allows us to make the sign-up process a lot easier because the sign-up process doesn't involve Hive keys. It can just be a ceramic account, and then you can associate the different blockchain accounts that you want with that. And then eventually you can post. We can do some kind of proxy system where the posts that are posted off-chain get rewarded by on-chain proxy accounts, which then eventually accumulate Hive to the point where you can get a free Hive account. You can click to upgrade to a free Hive account. So we've built the back end to that so far. Login with MetaMask is built into Dbuzz's test site right now. So Ethereum users can log in and post to Hive apps now. And as this spreads out, of course, then we'll be able to have multiple other apps posting without using just their Hive account, but with other blockchain accounts. And this is massively important for Hive because there's lots of other Web3 ecosystems out there that are trying to do this. A lot of them are failing either because they've got high transaction fees or they're not able to scale, or they release their token with a centralized ICO, and you're talking about content and free speech. And so you're going to get regulatory issues in the future with some of these chains. This system allows us to use Hive as the base, and Hive is regulated by the community. And so it's really a very, very powerful thing, I think, going forwards. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, so we call it the Union Indexer. This is where we're combining Hive content and off-chain content onto the same trending feed. That can be implemented into your app. Yeah, I think I've basically mentioned most of those points there. Let's see if I can change the... Right. The other thing that we did recently was we took a fork of Xsense's front end, and we made it super easy for basically people without dev skills to get their own website, get their own PrivX server, paste a few lines of code into a command prompt on the computer, and spin up their own Breakaway community on Hive. So they've got their own platform. It's separate to Xsense. It's separate to all the other platforms on Hive. It's its own standalone platform. Really easy to spin up, and it's a fork of the Xsense front end. In the near future, we're going to bring out an API for posting videos so that all the front ends on Hive will be able to have their own video posting directly from their own platforms instead of having to go and post your videos through ThreeSpeak. So these basically become their own video platforms or their own content communities that are super easy for people to spin up, free, and just makes the ecosystem more and more decentralized and better. So yeah, with these communities, you'll basically be able to self-host all your content. So your community members will be able to step up and say, hey, I'm really keen on this community. I really, really like it. I want to use the Speak network. I'm going to spin up an IPFS node on the Speak network, and I'm going to store the content of this community voluntarily. And there'll be a certain point where those start to fill up. So all these people will have their content stored. But then once people run out of room, you're going to have some kind of incentivization system that helps people reward the storage and the hosting of content on these communities. But the point is that it'll be run by the community, hosted by the community, under the control of the community. And therefore, I think that's really cool because you're going to get a lot of people stepping in voluntarily to do a lot of this work and just say, yeah, I'm really passionate about this community. So I want to store the content, or I want to run some infrastructure or whatever. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit in terms of who wants to get involved in this stuff. One of the things that we're doing is we're using the Xsense point system so that as people use these Breakaway communities, so obviously the keenest, most interested community members will log into these platforms and use them. And we can use the Xsense point system to reward them for commenting, posting, sharing, liking, logging in, things like this. And keep a track of that over time to the point where after 3, 4, 5 months of these communities using this, you're going to have a distributed point system of which accounts have used which accounts are the most keen, right? And we'll obviously have to deal with bots with that as well, and we have to come up with ways to solve bot issues. But then if you think about it, if the content creator that created that community then drops a token to those community members without giving themselves any tokens, I would say it's not a security. It's kind of outside the system. And you're not giving yourselves any tokens, you're using a protocol to drop to the community. And then at that point, you can use a proof of brain token to start distributing the token from 0. And if the content creator posts, that community is going to vote for that content creator. So they're going to earn a stake eventually as well. And this makes a really, really robust, I believe, token drop system that we can build with these Breakaway communities, to the point where these communities are immutable. They're using Hive, and it's a beautiful thing that they're immutable on Hive anyway. But if they've got their own token, it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And the mistake a lot of projects have made is that they've basically directed the initial distribution of the tokens themselves. And so you've got all these ICOs that have given themselves 15, 20% of the token, and it puts them into question in the eyes of the SEC. Whereas we can build a standard on Hive for distributing tokens to communities that it doesn't get around it, but it just does it in a fair, proper way, in the same way that, for example, Bitcoin did it. You know, they didn't give themselves any tokens from day one, and so they can't be regulated as a security. And I think that's really important going forward for these communities. And then we're going to build in various governance mechanisms. On Hive, we have the one token, one vote. But there's nothing wrong with starting to build into the individual communities one account, one vote, or a mix of one token, one vote. I really like, personally, the thing that Darren Laram is doing with Fractally, where you present every month and the community distributes tokens to the people that are presenting the most valuable stuff, basically. So we could start combining these things into these communities and giving these communities real sovereignty using this system. Infrastructure service pools. So this is also really, really important. Each one of these communities has to be able to provide its own liquidity. And so an infrastructure service pool is basically, it's like a DeFi liquidity pool, except what happens is the blockchain will give you services, for example, or give you products that you can buy, right? It's created from the blockchain. So to give you an example, with the SPK.network core, you put money into the SIP and you receive Larynx mining tokens out. And you use those Larynx miner tokens to mine more efficiently in the ecosystem. So it's like you're paying into the blockchain with money, and then you're getting out some other feature that you can use elsewhere in the network. With that payment, the beauty of this is because it's a decentralized system, you're not paying an individual, you're not paying a company, you're not paying a person, you're paying the chain. So that money can go into a DeFi pool and get locked in as liquidity that isn't some staker's liquidity, it's paid in by the community. And so you can start to create liquidity pools with this method where the chains are basically providing the user of the ecosystem with something in exchange for the fact that they've put liquidity into the ecosystem, basically. And then, of course, those liquidity pools can be used to generate fees, and those fees don't all have to then go back to the stakers. They can go back to the community to say, for example, on the SPK network, the SIP on the SPK network will fund the infrastructure operators. So the infrastructure operators, if times get bad and the currency goes down or whatever, will be able to divert some of the SIP fees back to the infrastructure operators. I think that's really important. It's a really cool way to use this technology. I haven't seen anywhere else in the world that's using DeFi pools in this way. And then if you imagine that the individual Breakaway communities as well will also have their own SIPs, it's just incredibly powerful for the sustainability of these communities. The SIP hasn't been worked on yet, but it's certainly something we've got in place, and we're going to try and work on that and build it out over the next year or so, hopefully. Of course, on Hive, if we make people pay into the SIP to receive Larynx in Hive, it becomes a sink for Hive. So you get to lock up a lot of Hive in that way, which I think is very good for the ecosystem. Then we can start to do things like autonomous ad rights. So I'm not saying I'm a massive fan of advertising, but the communities will be able to choose for themselves to what extent they advertise. And it's like that's another service that you can pay into the SIP, you can pay into the chain and receive ad rights in return. And then you can maybe find a way to have a space on your community front end or some general advertisement in the ecosystem that could bring revenue into the chain, but you're not paying an individual company, you're paying the chain. So this can all go and get locked in as liquidity into these SIPs. And they become massive sinks for the tokens. Yeah. Wrapping tech. A lot of you know that we're working relatively closely with Peerplays, and the reason we're doing that is because we like the fact they've built wrapping tech using DPoS technology on Graphene. They've already got a Bitcoin wrapping mechanism onto DPoS, so you can wrap Bitcoin from the Bitcoin blockchain to the Peerplays blockchain. They've built the same thing for Hive, or they're about to release the same thing for Hive, so you can wrap Hive from Hive to Peerplays. And the beauty of this, I think, is that it's something that we'll be able to adopt into Hive at some point. This is all kind of experimental, and so the first people doing this, great that they're working on it, they know what they're doing. And once they've got the technology out, we can figure out a way to adopt it, bring it onto Hive maybe, or leave it on Peerplays, depending on what the community wants to do. But the beauty of it is we're going to end up in the next few months with a situation where you're going to have an interface like a plugin, and you just go and you say, I want to move my Bitcoin from the Bitcoin blockchain to the SPK chain. And you just click a button, and it all happens in the back end. And the same for Polygon tokens, same for Ethereum tokens. They're working all this stuff. So we're going to be able to wrap a lot of these tokens onto the Hive ecosystem. And the beauty of that is that Hive is feeless. You're going to have these SIPs where you can stake these things too. And it's just far more powerful example of how to use these tokens, how to provide liquidity to these tokens than doing it on the chains that they're currently on, like the Ethereum chain or the Polygon chain. So I think this wrapping technology is really, really important. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that happen. SPK governance. So the SPK token is how you govern the network. So the more SPK you accumulate, the more you're going to be able to vote on what variables are in the network. So, you know, what percentage of the SIP fees go to the infrastructure providers, for example, or what percentage of Hive payments into the SIP get split up and broken into the different liquidity pairs in that ecosystem, and all sorts of various other governance rights that you need. We're hoping to also build a Speak bond system, and there's a lot of talk, I know a lot of you guys know Taskmaster 4450, about building a bond system into Hive as well, so the longer you stake, the more return you can get. So we'll do the same thing with Speak tokens as well, so the more Speak you stake, the longer you stake it for, the better interest return, and then we can build like a bond market for that, and use it as a collateral basis to get more loans and things like that. So I think that's going to be really interesting going forwards. And then, of course, the Speak DAO. So far, with the Larynx drop, most of you are probably aware there's a Larynx drop every month, so you claim your Larynx tokens. A certain amount of those Larynx tokens are unclaimed, and you basically take, I think the community is basically voting on about 15% that are going to get put into a DAO. And the beauty of that is that what I ultimately want to do with this technology is I want to be able to go to other platforms that maybe they don't know anything about blockchain, but they're thinking about Web3. I want to be able to go to them and say, keep operating your infrastructure how you're operating it, but we're going to basically let you integrate that into the Speak network so that you can run your infrastructure, but running it on a Speak node, and then you'll earn ownership in the network because you'll be able to earn Speak, right? And in order to incentivize them to do that, we'll have a Larynx DAO, and the community can create a proposal and then send some of those Larynx tokens to the platform. And that way, the platform can then get started and start earning Speak and becoming a part owner in the Speak network. And ultimately, they really do the same thing that they've always done, because they just run a node in the same way that they run their infrastructure currently, but it's just a Speak node instead of their infrastructure. So I think it's a really interesting way to be able to spread Web3 technology to the existing platforms that have got existing user bases and really help them integrate Web3. Because ultimately, we know that a lot of these platforms are already building their own Web3 solutions, and they're spending thousands and thousands and thousands of hours to integrate Web3. Whereas in reality, they could just integrate something like the Speak network and Hive and save themselves thousands and thousands of hours. And so the DAOs are going to be really good incentivization mechanisms to pay these guys a little bit of money to get them started in the ecosystem. Yeah, so that's going to be a cool thing, I think. What else have we got? And then the Speak governance token is capped. So it'll reach a cap. We don't know exactly when yet. We haven't decided what we're going to propose. But it'll be like a number of decades away. So yeah. What else we got? Community-driven content regulation. So everyone always talks to me on FreeSpeak about, well, how are you going to regulate this? How are we going to make sure we don't get really shitty posting in the ecosystem? And there's 3 ways that we're looking to build. So one is a content portal. And that's basically, it's like a Swiss cheese where, if you've got NSFW content that comes up that's not tagged as NSFW content because either the user forgot to tag it or they're trying to abuse the system, then you'll be able to use your stake to vote and force an NSFW tag onto a piece of content. And then that Swiss cheese model won't let the NSFW content through. So if the front end's running that content gateway, it won't show the NSFW content. But other platforms will be able to. And as long as all of that's open source, it means that we won't have ultimate control. The people in the community will have control over what content gets censored and what doesn't, which I think is very important. Content policies, so the people doing the storage, they'll also have to kind of have a standard as to what they're willing to store. And if you store loads of really shitty content that's really abusive or whatever, then you're going to get reputational loss over time. So we're building a reputation system in for the storage guys. Yeah, so they just need to basically set a standard and say, we're willing to store this, but we're not going to store this. But ultimately, that's what we do right now as FreeSpeak, but we don't want to be the sole proprietors of that. We want everyone to be able to do that in their own way. And then validator nodes. So the Speak network will have a top 20 validator set of nodes. And these guys are really important because the content will flow through them, and they will basically capture it into the network and then say, right, now you guys can go store it. So the storage nodes will come to the validator nodes and take the content onto their own storage nodes. And then those storage nodes will be the ones that get pinged by the validator nodes later to confirm they've stored what they're saying they're storing, and then get rewarded by the proof of access algorithm. So the validator nodes are going to be like key central figures in the network. And they're going to be essentially able to have their own kind of content policy regulation where if I see a validator node that's letting loads of shitty content through, I'm not going to give them my votes. They're not going to get into the top 20 list. They're not going to earn the majority stake from the Speak network. So those are three mechanisms through which we can do community-driven content regulation rather than it just being whatever FreeSpeak says. And then I'll just briefly talk about NFTs. We think these communities will be able to do NFT mining. So the more of the community tokens that you stake and accumulate, you'll be able to mine NFTs from that community. And those NFTs will be rarefied, of course, and maybe over time they'll have value if the communities become successful. So that's a way to incentivize the communities to hold more of the token so that then they get some rewards from the system as well. And that's a bit more of a long-term thing that we're going to build out. And then just to show you what the Speak network currently looks like, it's a little bit blurry, but we've got some fantastic people running Speak nodes. So we started doing this about 4 months ago, and we have 68 nodes now. And these are people that have just come forward and said, look, we're passionate about free speech. We want to run these nodes. A lot of people are new operators as well. So they're learning to operate nodes as they go. There's like a whole community there that are teaching each other how to operate nodes. We also have, is anyone in the room a node operator, by the way? Can you put your hands up? Hey, how's it going? It's really good to see you. Honestly, like, it's really good to see people stepping up because for right now, it's just distribution phase of the tokens. The tokens aren't really worth anything, but it's just really great to see people stepping up. And these people are just people that are genuinely passionate about free speech. I think we have some of the best node operators in the world in this list as well. And it just really gives me a lot of hype and confidence about the project that there's people stepping up and running nodes. So we've started the larynx distribution. So every month you can claim your larynx. In the last 6 weeks, we started the Speak token distribution. And the way you can earn Speak is by staking your larynx like these guys do. And then they run nodes. So the more infrastructure you run in the ecosystem, the more larynx you stake, the more efficiently you mine. And then the other thing that we've done is now you can delegate to these guys. So if you believe, a lot of these guys have got great reputations in the ecosystem, so you can delegate your larynx to them and you can earn Speak as well. So that's all going on. Yeah, and that's kind of about it, I think. Yeah. The only other thing I want to say is that we've seen so many people in this ecosystem just fail in their tokenomics, right? They've really damaged their reputations by putting tokens in their pockets, by running semi-non-transparent ICOs and having pre-seeds and pre-mines. Hive hasn't got that, right? This is one of the we're dealing with free speech on FreeSpeak on the platform, and we really need a basis, a foundation that has a very difficult to regulate system. And Hive has that. It's a genuinely moral ecosystem in the way it's distributed. The founders' supply was removed, and it's a community-owned system. So you look at like Hive Blockchain Technologies that tried to sue Hive while they tried to do a cease and desist, and they couldn't do anything. There's no one to go to speak to, right? This is like a first in the industry, right? This is groundbreaking stuff, and it's because of the principles of how Hive's been released. Well, we've done Speak Network in exactly the same way. We haven't given ourselves any tokens. We've dropped the tokens to the ecosystem. All of you are part owners in this. We don't benefit any more than anyone else does. You know, there's no ICO. There's no fund that we put in our pocket or anything. It's run by the community for the community. And I almost feel a bit like now we're in the very early phases of this, but the project's about 2 years old, and I'm starting to feel like now these guys are running the project, you know? And I see them building little cool fixes for each other, suggesting ways to run the nodes more efficiently. And I don't know any of that stuff. I'm just the guy that came up with the vision as how to do it with Dan. And it's just beautiful to see. It's beautiful to see other people stepping in now. There's people in that list that own way more tokens than I do. And they haven't done a single day's work, apart from running a few nodes for a short period of time. That's great. That's the way decentralization should be, right? That's a fair distribution. And what that does is it lays a foundation for this network such that it will be community regulated, it will be community driven, it won't be very easy to regulate by corrupt authorities, and we will be able to take the power of regulation back for ourselves, yeah? And we'll be able to own this system for ourselves. And I think that's super important. And Hive has a great chance to demonstrate that to the world. A lot of these blockchain projects are failing big time. And they look great. The investors are making money. The VCs are in there. There's no VCs here, you know. The VCs are going to have to buy the tokens off the market like all of us do, right? And this is the opportunity that we have with this project. And I'm super, super, super excited about it. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe there is somebody who wants to ask you a question. Yeah? Okay, then I'm gonna get the microphone. In that case. Yeah, but the people on the live stream won't hear you.
So yeah, my question is, do you intend to make the code for ceramic accounts open source so other frontends can do it? Because I feel we need a standardized system across the board.
Yeah.
This type of one.
Everything that we do is open source. The only thing that isn't open source in our ecosystem is FreeSpeak, but that's because we built it really early on. It's a mess, but we plan to open source as FreeSpeak for WebEnd. Everything else is open source. So you can take this. Dbuzz has already integrated it. We kind of did it with them because they've got a really nice, simple login system, and they were keen to integrate. The reason that we haven't integrated into FreeSpeak yet is because FreeSpeak's a little bit more of a convoluted login system because of the active key requirements, so that we can allow people to post and go away and do the encoding in the background and then post the video after the encoding's finished, so they're not online when the video is posted. But that's being updated. But yeah, I'm hoping that other people work on this. This isn't mine. I don't benefit from it. It's yours, yeah? And so any of these apps, any of you guys can implement this off-chain system. The other thing that we were working a little bit with Acidio, but I don't know whether we're going to continue there just yet. We've got a little bit more discussion to do. But we scoped out a way that you can get a ceramic account and maybe get 10 ceramic accounts associated with one Hive proxy account. And then that Hive proxy account is what gets upvoted when you post off-chain. So you can post off-chain and then get rewarded via Hive proxy account. And when you accumulate enough Hive, you can then click a button and claim a free Hive account from your off-chain stuff, right? So that we haven't built that yet, but that's something that we want to build in the background. But it's all open source. It's all for everyone to integrate, for sure.
Awesome.
Any more questions?
Starkerz.
Hey.
You are really charming too. I'm returning the compliment you made yesterday.
Thank you very much.
Here is my question. Why are you still relying on the Peerplays.network? I do not say it's bad technological choice, but my concern is more about its governance, which is not as decentralized as Hive, if any.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke a lot about this in the last year, and we moved our tokenomics system away from them, and we've moved it to the honeycomb layer 2 with Deluxe, partly because of the discussion we had with you. For us, we just like the wrapping technology that they've built. We think the principle of having a decentralized group of escrows that the community votes for, right? And if one escrow gets voted out the list, it brings a new one in, moves the currency in escrow to another account, and then distributes the new keys. That's really good technology. If someone can build it on Hive from scratch, great. But I feel like there's a way to maybe leverage the resources that have already been spent there and bring it across to Hive somehow. In terms of the security side, I agree there's some issues there. You know, you follow what's being discussed there. But really, we're really interested in the wrapping technology that they've built, and we think it could be useful. But again, if there's another way to do it directly on Hive without using Peerplays, then maybe that's the route that we go. But I think they've done most of the work already. And maybe we can... The initial idea with them was to try and, you know, like a rising tide lifts all boats, you know. They're part of the DPoS ecosystem, so maybe Hive can add something to them to make them more decentralized and better. Maybe there's other ways to further decentralize and securitize that technology that's separate, that maybe is for a separate discussion for a bit later. But yeah, I definitely don't want to expose anyone to any risk here. So I appreciate the comment that you make. And yeah, use the system with caution. Don't put too much money into it. Play around with it. We'll experiment with it. As long as the technology is there, we can always move the security side of it. We can always move it to Hive, maybe such that the security can be improved. But hopefully, the whole idea is to save dev hours, basically. If they've already built it, then we should use what they've built and try and securitize it in some other way. Yep.
Thank you.
Behind you, last question from Jiza. JZE. How do you pronounce your username?
Jason. Yeah. So I was speaking with Eddie, and
Eddie Spino.
Yeah, I asked him like, why you guys stopped doing live stream, and he said like, oh, we changed development and we're going in a different direction. But that was all that he said.
Man, I don't think he felt good. So Dan's been a bit ill for everyone's information. And he couldn't come because he's under the weather at the moment. So we've had a couple of health issues. I was also living in a country where there's a war at the moment. So I've been moving around and bouncing around. And just over the summer, we just haven't had time to do the live streams. Are you talking about live streams on ThreeSpeak? Sorry?
Yeah.
Sorry. I was talking about something completely different. Live streams on ThreeSpeak, we integrated them a couple of years ago, but they were super expensive to do. And with the Speak network coming online, we've really dedicated our resources to Speak network. We've ThreeSpeak's taken a little bit of a back seat because to us, the priority is to get this out. The Speak network is going to change the way video is stored. It's a super important thing, and it also protects us as a team, because if anything controversial gets on there, you see a lot of people being chased after these days. And so we really need to use the Hive community so that they can help us decentralize what we're doing. And that's where our resources are. So ThreeSpeak took a bit of a back seat. Of course, we're still working on it, but it's not as fast as we wanted. So we wanted to put live streams on ThreeSpeak, but unfortunately, it was really expensive, and at the time, we lost some dev resources. So we recommend people to go to Vim. Go use Vim. Vim.tv is a great platform. They've done a great job. And hopefully, at some point, in the same way that we're building an API so that other people can run videos straight from their own platforms using ThreeSpeak technology and the Speak network, hopefully Vim will allow it so that other people can implement an API so they can do live streams directly from their platforms. But I've not spoken to Vim about that, and I don't know if they've got any plans, but that should be where it gets moving eventually. But yeah, go use Vim. They're a great platform, for sure.
Vim it is. It's really difficult to quit Vim, by the way.
Is it? Do they hide the cross?
No, but it's another Vim I'm talking about. Insider joke
Very good, man.
from the guys from behind the terminals. Really, it's a program. You have to type semicolon Q, I think. Yes? Semicolon Q? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Mr. Starkerz, all the way from wherever life takes him.
I live in Holland right now.
He's living in Amsterdam currently.